One of the greatest blessings of my life was that after the public talks in 2004 with Gurudev, we got a chance to spend some private time with him for a couple of days in Gisborne, which is a tiny coastal city in New Zealand, less than 100,000 people, probably less than 50,000 people. And we were staying in this farmstead, a group of us, small group, who'd been travelling around the country in a tiny little aeroplane, one of those flying pencils with him. And it was just us and him. That was it. And he had no appointments apart from just one evening talk that had been organised with a local Māori church. So we got to have food, we got to see him in action, we got to just be with him, walk with him. And 3 examples where I learned something about naturalness, not through a teacher talking to me about it, but through me seeing it in his actions. That's it. That's what this video is about. Nothing special, just 3 simple anecdotes from this enlightened master's day that I was privileged to spend with him, with a small handful of others. The first was, there was a piano in the farmstead, and he walked out and he saw the piano and started to play it. And immediately a crowd gathered. And we were all very curious. We didn't know that he knew how to play the piano. And it soon became apparent that he'd never had any training in it. He was playing it with the cheekiness of a cat walking on it, but with so much more adeptness, creativity, and yet somehow skill as well. And I wish my words could do justice to the way he was playing it. It was more like he was playing with it. And it was cheeky. It was mischievous. It was fun. It was uninhibited and completely natural, what he was doing. His fingers were dancing up and down. He was being curious. He was being delighted. And that was such a lesson to me in how someone could engage with a piano, and by extension anything, without feeling like they had to be proficient at it. What a wonderful lesson. And it caused me to think, how much do we not do? Because we think we have to be proficient at something before we can share our creativity with others. And he just showed us you didn't need any proficiency or training at all. And he had us all in fits of laughter, simply through his creativity, flowing through his fingers and his uninhibited desire just to be present in the moment with what happened to have engaged him in that moment, which was a piano. And that was the first snippet. The second snippet, when he was on a couch and some people gathered round and, as often happens, started to ask him questions. And one woman in particular, who was standing up at the back, asked him a question and he answered it. And then, based on his answer, she asked another question. He answered that. And based on that answer, she asked a third follow-up question. At this point, he started to just get playful. See, in a previous knowledge talk, he talked about how answering questions just spawns more questions. And he was showing us this, that it didn't matter what answer he gave, there would be more questions. And this woman's questions really was about the role of the intellect, which was ironic, because the questions were very much from intellect, but they were leaving something behind. And after a little while, he just started getting a cheeky smile on his face, and his eyes started, and he grabbed his hair and he pulled it in front of his face, and then he pulled it back again, and then part of his beard and his hair at the same time, and he pulled in front of his face and then quickly back again, like he was a naughty child peeking from under a curtain. And the more that he did this, the more the woman became more irate in her questioning, and the more everyone in this growing audience just rolled with laughter at the theatre that was going on. And eventually the woman herself stopped her questions in exasperation, and then she too started laughing and realized that everything he'd been doing was not for our entertainment. That was simply a byproduct, but actually for her growth. So that she could see the role of play and playfulness, and how intellect by itself would lead you not to the ultimate. He could have said that, but he showed it using the spirit of play and spontaneity itself in the most encapsulating and endearing way possible. And the third anecdote I remember was when I was in the kitchen chopping up some vegetables for breakfast. And then suddenly I become aware that I'm on the bench here and the stove next to me, which is about this far away. Someone else is there, and I casually look to one side and then do a double take, and I realize it's Gurudev. And he's just standing there, and he's frying up something in a pan, some spices and smell and look delicious, just going about his own business, completely undistracted by what's happening next to him, of course, unlike me. And that was all it was. But that simplicity of that action just struck me, how, here he was, just cooking. He felt an urge to cook. He was cooking. He didn't need to cook. He was cooking. Being very simple, being very ordinary, very natural. Again, just doing what he felt was the appropriate action in each moment. Sometimes we have this view of a master of, not doing mundane things, and yet here he was, doing very mundane things and just being totally present. And the food was so beautiful. And someone next to him was chopping up some garlic, and I was curious to know how he'd respond, because garlic is well known in certain circles to have a rajasic effect, or create activity or restlessness in the mind, which makes it tough to meditate. And he said, just use a very little garlic. And so in that manner, he didn't say don't use it. He didn't want to curb that person's enthusiasm, but at the same time, he wanted that person to stay present in their practice, and so just gave them that encouragement. Continue what you're doing, but just a very little. Such incredible delicacy in action. So there we are. 3 precious vignettes from someone who's creating incredible transformation on the planet right now. And I look around now and I see, hundreds of thousands of prisoners around the world being benefited, and, tens of millions of courses, and all these rivers that have been revitalized, and, the peace settlement which was recently brokered by Gurudev in Colombia, and so many more things happening around the world. And yet how available, and how natural, and how everyday, and how among the people, as one of the people, this person can still be. And it's been a real example to me of how being a great leader doesn't mean you're inaccessible. In fact, it means that you are always accessible in many different forms, but you're always natural. You never stop being natural, and you never feel separate from anything and anyone else.